crochet hook that you're going to need for this project is a 4mm crochet hook. You're also going to need a tapestry needle and a pair of scissors. I also used a very small tapestry needle, a slender one that will fit through the holes of the purse, and it also has a large eye on it, eye of the needle, so you could fit the yarn through. And then you're going to need a DMC yarn threader to get the yarn through the eye of the needle, and I'll show you when we get to that point. I'll show you how I do that. The purse frame that I used, you can see the little holes on it, and the tapestry needle or darning needle that I chose will fit right through the hole of the purse frame, which is by Everything Mary. It's a large silver purse frame. If you like the materials that I use in my video tutorials, my new blog, I put links to where you can go to the exact material or something very similar. The yarn that I used is by Karen Big Cakes. The color is Plum Pudding. It's a really gorgeous color. And one of these big cakes will complete a full scarf and flip mittens from my Crochet Heavenly Blessing set. And then with the second big cake, I made the boot cuffs and the hat, and you have plenty left over, which is why I'm using this leftover yarn to make a matching purse to go with it. This is information about the yarn for those of you that don't have the exact brand of yarn or type of yarn, and again, mine is Plum Pudding. So the first thing we're going to do is size our starting chain, which will be the bottom of the purse. This purse frame is a 5-inch. You can see by the boxes on my board here, this is an inch, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inch. So if you want the purse to be the same size as the purse frame, your starting chain will be the same size. But for mine, I want it slightly larger at the bottom, so I'm making mine slightly larger, and then it'll taper towards the top. So I just want to do something a little bit different. I have other video tutorials for making purses, and one of them has beads. So if you want to go to my YouTube channel, you can check that out, or my blog, because I'm going to put this on my blog as well. So to start, go ahead and grab your yarn, and then we're going to start with the slip knot. So go ahead and turn the yarn over on itself to form a loop. Then grab the base of the loop with your middle finger and thumb. Just put your crochet hook through the loop, and then just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the loop through the yarn for a slip knot. Go ahead and cinch that knot down, and then bring the loop around the crochet hook, not too tight, not too loose. And then you're going to make a chain, your starting chain for the size that you want for your purse. For me, I'm going to start with the chain of 4 on video tutorial, and when I come back, I'll show you how long mine is. So you're just going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through the loop for your first chain, second, third, and fourth. And since this is the bottom of the purse that we're creating right now, don't worry about your stitch count for the design. I would try to end with an even number though for your starting chain. And just in case you're not familiar with this stitch, this is the Trinity stitch. You can see the 3 strands of yarn in the stitch, which gives it its name, the Trinity stitch. This stitch requires a multiple of 2 stitches. And then for your cross stitch, this is your cross stitch. It forms a cross, which is why it's called the cross stitch. You're going to need a multiple of 8 to complete a full cross stitch. Sometimes you can't, for the size that you want, you can't get the full cross stitch. You can make a half cross stitch, which is fine, which is why I usually just say try for a multiple of 2. But if you want a full cross stitch, you can try for a multiple of 8. So for my starting chain, I'm starting with a chain of 30, and then that brings me an inch out on both sides of my 5-inch purse frame. So now, after I have my starting chain, and again mine is a chain of 30, we're going to be working in rounds. So we're going to be working on one side first. Go ahead and take your crochet hook, go into the second chain from the hook, go ahead and bring up a loop. Now you have 2 loops on the hook. Go ahead and yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through both for a single crochet. And then you're going to take your crochet hook and go into each stitch and make 1 single crochet. And then when you reach the end, come back, and then I'll show you what to do next. So now this is what my work looks like, and I have 1 stitch left. So I'm going to make 3 single crochet into that last stitch. So take your crochet hook, go into that last stitch, make your single crochet, and again you're making 3 single crochets into the last stitch. And as you're making them, you're turning your work so that the opposite side is facing up. So here is where we made our single crochet on the opposite side. Now we're going to make single crochet in the round on the opposite side. And at the same time, you're going to be going behind your loose yarn end to bury it. So take your crochet hook, go into that next stitch on the opposite side, go behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, and make a single crochet. You're going to make 1 single crochet into every stitch around except for the last stitch. So come back when you get to the last stitch and I'll work that last stitch with you. Then you have 1 stitch left. Go ahead and make your 3 single crochet into that last stitch. Then you're going to go ahead and get your yarn marker and place it right where you left off. We're going to get ready for the next round. I have 60 stitches in the round. Now, the yarn marker, I'm just using one of my scraps of yarn. To me it's just easier to take it out and then move it up than some of the stitch markers, but you can use a stitch marker if you want to. Then just go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, and make your single crochet. And then you're going to make 1 single crochet into the next 28 stitches, which should bring you to the opposite side, and then come back. So this is an increase round, which means we're going to be increasing the number of stitches in the round. So now I have the 2 stitches on the opposite end, so go ahead and just turn your work, and you're going to place, actually we're going to make 2 single crochet into 1 of those stitches. So make 1 more single crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to make 2 single crochet onto that end stitch, which is the next stitch. So 2 single crochet into the same stitch, and this is increasing the stitch count by 1 by doing this. So now you're going to go ahead and make 1 single crochet into every stitch except for the last stitch in the round. So when you reach the last stitch on the round, come back. So then when you get back to your yarn marker, you see that you have 1 stitch on the opposite end. You're going to place 2 single crochet into that stitch. Then you can move your yarn marker up to get ready for the next increase round. So on that last round, I have 62 stitches, so you can see I increased the round by 2 stitches because I put an extra stitch on each end, which is the same thing. We're going to be placing extra stitches on each end, but this time we're going to be placing 2 extra stitches on each end, which will increase our stitch count by 4. So now you're going to take and make 1 single crochet into the next 29 stitches, and that will bring you to the opposite end. And then I'll work those increased stitches with you. So 1 single crochet into the next 29 stitches, which will bring you to the opposite end. Now that brings you to the opposite end, and now you notice you have 2 stitches on the end. You're going to make 2 single crochet into each of those stitches. Then you're going to make 1 single crochet on the opposite side. So 1 single crochet into every stitch on the opposite side except for the last 2 stitches before the yarn marker. So come back when you get to the last 2 stitches before the yarn marker, and then I'll work those stitches with you. So now I have 2 stitches left on the end, so I'm going to make 2 single crochet into each of these last 2 remaining stitches on the end. And then that brings you back to your yarn marker. So now I just want to point out what we're doing by making these stitches. So you can see that even though we're increasing the stitch count in the round, you're not really increasing the length of the bottom of your purse. You're actually increasing the width of the bottom of the purse. So it's getting longer this way for the bottom of the purse. Now for baby booties, I have separate video tutorials for baby booties that often use this pattern. You can see that you're actually, since the baby booty would be this direction, that you're actually lengthening it. So that's where you have to be careful with your starting chain. You have to account for the lengthening that you do for the baby booties. But for this coin purse, your starting chain is actually going to be the length of your purse. So I wanted to point that out. And what I'm doing is I'm making the bottom of the purse, this is going to be the bottom, I'm making it wider so it can hold more in the purse. So now you go ahead and move your yarn marker up, and I'm probably going to be doing this a couple more times. I'm going to see after I increase it a couple more times, but you'll be able to use this same method to increase the width of your purse as many times as you want. So now for this next increase round, I'm going to make 1 single crochet into the next 29 stitches again. So go ahead, finish making 1 single crochet into the next 29 stitches, and then that will bring you to the opposite side again. So now I've reached the opposite end, and this time you'll see that I have 3 stitches on the end. So for the first round it was 1, the second round it was 2, and now it's 3. And that's going to keep happening each increase round that you're creating. So you can keep going to the size that you want for the width of your purse. So now I'm going to make 2 single crochet into each of these 3 stitches on the end. So I made 2 single crochet into each of the 3 stitches on the end, and that means that on this side I increased the stitch count by 3 because I made 1 extra stitch into each of those 3 stitches. So then I'm going to make 1 single crochet into every stitch except for the last 3 stitches before the yarn marker. So now I have the last 3 stitches on the opposite end before the yarn marker. I'm going to be placing 2 single crochet into each of those last 3 stitches. So now that brings me to a stitch count of 72. So I actually like the size now of the bottom of my purse, so I'm going to actually keep mine this size. And like I said, you can increase yours more if you want to increase the width of the bottom of the purse. But I like the stitch count. I stopped at 72, which is a multiple of 2 as well as a multiple of 8. So both of my Trinity stitches and cross stitches will work in the design. So now we're going to work the Trinity stitch designs. So go ahead and remove your yarn marker. You're not going to need it anymore. Then you're going to take your crochet hook, go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, make a single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch. So you're going to take your crochet hook, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop. Now you have 2 loops on the hook. Go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop. 3 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop. And then 4 loops on the hook. Go ahead and yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 4. Then you're going to chain 1. You just completed your first Trinity stitch. Now you're going to go back into the same stitch that you just finished your Trinity stitch. So here you can see one of the yarn strands of the Trinity stitch. You're going to go into that same stitch that you just finished your last Trinity stitch in. So take your crochet hook, go into that same stitch, bring up a loop, and then repeat. Go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop until you have 4 loops on the hook. Then yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 4. And then chain 1. So don't forget your chain 1 as you're working these Trinity stitches. So I'm going to work one more with you. You're going to go into the same stitch that you finished your last Trinity stitch. Bring up a loop. Next stitch, bring up a loop. Next stitch, bring up a loop. Yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through all 4. And then don't forget your chain 1. So go ahead, finish making these Trinity stitches in the round until you've completed 8 rounds of Trinity stitches. One thing I want to make sure that you know, you can see how mine looks. I made Trinity stitches all the way around. I'm back to the beginning. Now, one of the to make your Trinity stitches line up, I just want to show you a way that you can make sure that you do that. This is my last Trinity stitch in the round. So now I'm going into that last stitch to bring up a loop, just like I've been doing all the way around. Then I'm going into the next stitch to bring up a loop. Your 4th loop should be in the chain 1 space of the previous round's Trinity stitch. So you always want to bring that 4th loop up into the previous round's chain 1 space. And then just continue, just like you've been doing. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out. And again, for mine, you can change how many rounds of Trinity stitches that you want and then how many cross stitches so that your coin purse will be a unique one. For mine, I'm going to start with 8 rounds of the Trinity stitches. And then when we come back, I'll show you how to make the cross stitch design for your purse. After you finish your 8 rounds of the Trinity stitches, we're going to make 1 round of 1 single crochet in every stitch. And you can use your yarn marker now to help you so you know where you left off. So then you're just going to go into the next stitch over and then just make a single crochet, and then you're going to make 1 single crochet in every stitch around back to the yarn marker. So I just finished my round of 1 single crochet in every stitch, and I still have a stitch count of 72 in the round. You can see the bottom of the purse, and you can see my colors too. I'm kind of keeping the color scheme the way that I want it. With this type of yarn, you'll just get the color that comes up as you crochet. Now, if you don't want the next color to be in your purse, then you can use your yarn winder to make a little ball. So this is my second skein after making my Crochet Heavenly Blessings set. So remember that with one big cake, I was able to make the scarf and the flip mittens. And this is what I had left over from the first cake because I want to use this yarn for something else. I'm going to make a separate video tutorial with the matching bottle, crochet bottle holder. And then I'm going to use this color, so I'm going to get a yarn winder and just save this color, and then I'll resume my coin purse with this beautiful plum colored yarn. So here is my simple yarn winder, and I have a link available, an affiliate link available on my blog, www.helenmaycrochet.com, where you can find a similar yarn winder to mine. It's the same kind I would have gotten if I would have known it was available at the time, but this one works for me, so I'm not going to get another one. It works really great. All you do is you just take, this is my ironing board, and it comes with this little device that you can attach to the ironing board. So I just slip it here. You can unwind the latch here so that it fits under your ironing board. So here you can see that I can just fit it right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and screw it down until it's almost close to the ironing board, and then I'll slip the yarn winder onto the latch here. So now I'm going to go ahead and slip my yarn winder in place, and then I'm just going to keep turning until I have it secured. Now it's nice and secure, and I'm ready to attach my yarn. So I just cut the yarn, and then I'll tie a knot and reattach it after I'm finished getting to the color that I want. So now I'm just going to take, and there's a little notch at the top of the yarn winder. I'm going to slip my yarn on there, and I'm just leaving about 1 inch of the yarn free. If you put too much, then it starts to wrap on the inner portion of the yarn winder, which you don't want. Then you just take and slip the yarn through this little loop here, which holds the yarn as it's creating the cake, the yarn cake. And then you just kind of hold this portion of it, and then you just wind the yarn. And then you just keep winding until you get down to the color that you want for the coin purse. When the yarn is small enough, you can use your yarn bowl to hold the yarn as it's winding. And I have some great links for yarn bowls as well on my blog. Then you can see that with the yarn bowl and a steady tension on the yarn, I'm able to wind it really fast. I can quickly get down to the color that I want for my coin purse. Then when I'm finished, I just take and cut the yarn, and then I just get a ribbon for tying into the center of the yarn. This is what's left of my cake now, so it's ready to go for with my coin purse. Then I just undo the yarn cake from my yarn winder, and then I just take and bring the ribbon through the center, and then I just tie a little bow, because I'm going to be removing this bow when I'm ready to use this yarn, but for storage purposes I find that this works great. Just tie a little bow on it, and then it's ready to go when you find that project that you want with this particular color of yarn. And then it's just really easy to remove from the ironing board. I just remove it, just unscrew it until you have enough room to remove it, and then I just put it away for easy storage. And I also keep the box so it's stored nicely in the box, And if you absolutely have to have this one, this is what this is who I got mine for and what I paid. And you may be able to use a coupon. I can't remember if I used my coupon or not, but I had gotten this one from Hobby Lobby. And I think I did use my coupon with this one. So now I'm ready to reattach my yarn ends, and all I do is just tie a knot. And when I tie my knot, I make sure to leave a long loose yarn end for burying into my work. Then you're able to resume with your new color. So we're going to resume with the cross stitch. So after finishing that last single crochet, you can remove your yarn marker now, and you're going to take your crochet hook and you're going to slip stitch into the next stitch over. So you just yarn over and then pull the yarn through for a slip stitch. Then you're going to make a chain of 4. 1, 2, you can see that brings it right up to the knot. Just drop the loose yarn ends towards the inside of the purse, and then chain 3, and then chain 4. And we're not going to be able to bury the loose yarn ends yet. I'll show you how to bury those later. But for now, I'm going to show you how to make your cross stitch. So for the first cross stitch, what you're going to do is you're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and you're going to make a treble crochet into the 3rd stitch. So I'm going to show you these stitches with my tapestry needle. So here is the first skipped stitch. Here's the second skipped stitch, and you're going to work a treble crochet into that 3rd stitch, the 3rd and the 4th. So 1 treble crochet into the 3rd stitch, 1 treble crochet into the 4th stitch. So you take and yarn over twice, 1, 2, you're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then you're going to make a treble crochet into that 3rd stitch. So now you have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through 2 loops. 3 loops remaining on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through 2 loops. 2 loops remaining on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through those 2 remaining loops, and you just completed a treble crochet. So now you're going to make a treble crochet into the next stitch as well. So yarn over twice, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, then create your treble crochet stitch. So now you're going to go back to those 2 skipped stitches, and you're going to work a treble crochet into the first skipped stitch. So here's the first skipped stitch. Then you're going to work a treble crochet into the second skipped stitch, and you're going to go in front of the 2 treble crochet that you just made. So you're going to yarn over twice, then you're going to go into that first skipped stitch from the back or the wrong side to the right side, just like this. You're going to bring up a loop and then make your treble crochet. So now you're ready to make a treble crochet into that second skipped stitch. So now you've completed half of the cross stitch. Now we're going to create the second half of the cross stitch to complete a full cross stitch. So you're going to skip the next 2 stitches and again work 1 treble crochet into the 3rd and 4th stitch. So skip 2 stitches, work a treble into that 3rd stitch. Now this time you could see how the front of the cross stitch forms an upside down triangle or an upside down V shape. So now we're going to create the back part of the cross stitch. So you're going to turn your work. I find it's easier just to turn the work, and then you're going to work into that first skipped stitch. So here's that first skipped stitch, and then here is the second skipped stitch. So now you're going to work a treble behind those 2 treble stitches you just made. So you're going to yarn over twice, and then you're going to go into that first skipped stitch, bring up a loop, and then create your treble crochet. Then you're going to make a treble crochet into the second skipped stitch. And then sometimes it's easier just to go from the front or the wrong or right side to the wrong side, but either way, you can do it either way as long as you're able to create your treble into that stitch. And that's just how I do it. Easiest way for me to do it. And then you have finished the 2 treble on the back side. So this is the wrong side, and when you're looking at the wrong side, you know you made the cross stitch correctly if you have a V shape. So on the wrong side you're going to have a V shape, and then when you turn your work, so go ahead and turn your work because we're going to proceed with the right side facing you now. So the right side, you know how you're making it correctly if you have an upside down V shape. So that is one completed full cross stitch. So now I'm going to make one more cross stitch with you. And it's really important to make sure that your cross stitch is facing the right direction. So many times I've had to go back because I wasn't paying attention and then undo my work, because you're going to be able to tell if you made a mistake. So it's easier to catch it early instead of having to go back and undo a lot of your work. That's never a fun thing to do. So I'm making the first cross stitch, half of it I mean, first half of the cross stitch. So here you can see here's a full complete one, and then here's a half one, and I'm starting the same way with the 2 treble in the front. Now I'm making the second half of the cross stitch, so I'm going to yarn over twice and skip 2 stitches, and then make my treble in the next 2 stitches. Now this time I want to turn my work, so I'm turning my work and working from behind to complete the full cross stitch. This is my second skipped stitch from behind. Then you can see this is the wrong side. You can see that I have my V shape and my second cross stitch complete. Now I'm going to turn my work back around to the right side to continue crocheting, and I always double check. So here I finished one cross stitch, here's my second, I did it correctly. So if it's not looking like this, then you know that something went wrong, so you go back and then correct it. And then you just continue making your cross stitches all the way around back to the beginning. Okay, so now I'm back to the beginning, and we're just going to double check our cross stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I have the 9th one. Now I'm just going to show you this 9th cross stitch because I've already made the front trebles. Now I'm going to be making the back trebles. So I've already skipped my 2 stitches and made one of my trebles, but then you'll see that the next stitch is close to where you made your initial chain 4. If you need to, you can make your last treble into that same stitch. Then just turn your work to complete the cross stitch. So then I just completed my last cross stitch, and you can see that all of them were made correctly. Then you can take and make a slip stitch into the top stitch of that first chain 4 that you made. So just go into that top stitch, yarn over, and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 1 and then just make 1 single crochet into every stitch around. So what I do is I always make a round of 1 single crochet in every stitch before and after any cross stitch round. So now this is what my work looks like. I love how it's turning out. It's turning out gorgeous. Then what you're going to do is we're going to place a yarn marker on this side, and you're going to have to keep an eye for the opposite side because we're going to make a decrease round. So this is going to be our first decrease round. So you're going to take your yarn marker, place it right where you left off, and we're going to make our Trinity stitch. So you're going to go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, and just make a single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, then the next stitch, and you're going to make your Trinity stitch, just like you did before. And then don't forget your chain 1. And you're going to make Trinity stitches all the way to the opposite side, and then come back. So for mine, I made 15 Trinity stitches, which brought me to the opposite side. So here you can see the opposite side, and I have 2 stitches, 2 in the middle, and then 2 stitches on the opposite side. So a total of 6 stitches on the end. I'm going to make 3 decrease stitches on this end. So to do that, you're just going to make your Trinity stitch as if you're going to make a Trinity stitch. So I have my 4 loops. I'm going to yarn over and go through all 4, except with the decreased Trinity stitch there is no chain 1. So no chain 1, and then you're just going to resume your next Trinity stitch. So this is my second Trinity stitch, decrease stitch. I'm going to yarn over and go through all 4 and no chain 1. So that's my second decrease stitch. I'm going to make 1 more. And no chain 1. So I made 3 decrease stitches on that opposite end. Now you're going to make your regular Trinity stitches all across the back of your purse. You're going to leave the last 6 stitches unworked. So now I'm not making a decrease stitch, I'm going to chain 1. So go ahead, finish your Trinity stitches, but leave your last 6 stitches before the yarn marker unworked. And I'll work those last decrease stitches with you. So don't forget your chain 1. So now I'm on the opposite side, and I'm almost back to the yarn marker. I have 6 stitches left. I'm going to make decrease stitches, decreased Trinity stitches in each of those stitches. So again, you're not going to chain 1, and then just continue until you've made 3 of them. 3 decrease, Trinity decrease stitches, so no chain 1. And then my last one will bring me up to my yarn marker. Then for the next round, I'm going to bring the yarn marker up. I'm just going to make 1 round of just Trinity decrease stitches. So you're going to make decrease stitches with the Trinity stitch all the way around. So no chain one for any of these Trinity stitches, all the way around back to your yarn marker, and then come back. So now you can see that the opening is smaller, and it's also the size of my purse frame. Then what you can do is take and move your yarn marker up, and you're going to make 3 rounds of regular Trinity stitches. So again, you're going to start in the same stitch where you just finished off your last decreased Trinity stitch, bring up a loop, go around the yarn marker to your next stitch, bring up a loop, and then just make a regular Trinity stitch. So you're going to need your chain 1, and you're going to make the regular Trinity stitch all the way around for 3 rounds. So again, don't forget your Trinity stitch, your chain 1. So for this round, you're going to want your chain 1. You do not want to decrease any more. Otherwise, your opening is going to get smaller. So make sure that you make your chain 1 and your Trinity stitches, and then complete 3 rounds, and then come back. Now here you can see I'm back to my yarn marker, and I have 2 stitches left for my 4th loop. So you may need to skip that stitch to get into your chain 1 stitch if you need to, because I like to work my Trinity stitches into the chain 1 space of the previous round's Trinity stitch. And then as you're working your Trinity stitches, you can kind of stretch and then just make sure that you're still fitting into the purse frame, which it is, as you're making your Trinity stitch rounds, last couple rounds. So I finished my 3 rounds of Trinity stitches. So now I'm just kind of double checking, and I can see that I need a few more rounds to fit into the crochet frame. So I'm going to make 3 more rounds and see if that will do it. So I just finished my 6th round of Trinity stitches, and I love how it looks, and it fits in the purse frame perfectly. So now I can sew it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and get my tapestry needle. But first, before you do that, go ahead and finish off here. So you're going to take your crochet hook, go into the next stitch over, and then just yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch, and then go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And now we're just going to bury any loose yarn ends. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Go ahead and turn your work inside out. That way you can take and bury any loose yarn ends that you might have. So you just take your tapestry needle, and then you just take and weave it through the same colored portion of your work. And I like to go a couple of directions to make sure it's nice and buried. Then you just take and trim the loose yarn end. So go ahead, bury any of your loose yarn ends, and then come back. So now I have the right side facing me again, and I have the front facing up. I'm going to set this aside for now. We're going to go ahead and take the tapestry needle. Make sure you have the tapestry needle that'll fit through the holes of your purse frame easily. And you're also going to need your DMC yarn threader. Then you're just going to take the yarn threader, put it through the eye of the needle, then hook the yarn, and then you're going to make sure that the hook goes right back through the eye of the needle. And then the easiest way that I've found to get the yarn through the eye of the needle is just move it up and down, and then that brings it through, and then you can just kind of pull the yarn through. You have to find the right strand. and then you're ready to sew. So go ahead and cut the length that you need. I usually just cut a large length for sewing. Now you're ready to start sewing the purse frame to the purse. So the first thing you want to do is open up your purse frame, and then you're just going to take and find the center. You want to sew the center of the purse frame first. So this is the center of the purse frame. So then once you find the center, go ahead and line it up. I'm going to start in the top right corner, facing me, the top right corner. So I'm going to go into that stitch with my tapestry needle. And then just bring it through. So I went through that top stitch and then through the hole on the purse frame. And then you want to leave a long loose yarn end for sewing. And then just make sure you have it still lined up. And then you're going to go in the stitch over. So you're going into the next stitch over, but first make sure that you're still lined up. And then you're going to go into that next stitch on the purse frame. And you're going to sew this all across the front of the purse. And you want to make sure that you have a nice stitch all the way across as you sew it in place. And then go ahead and just tie a knot on the back. So now, after I have my knot tied, I'm just going to position my purse again, and I could see that the next stitch will be right here. So I'm going to come up through that stitch with my tapestry needle and bring it up through the hole on the purse frame. And then go back down through the stitch on the purse. And I usually want to grab both loops. Make sure that I grab both loops of the purse. And that's how I sew across the front. So go ahead and finish the front, and then I'll help you with the rest of the purse frame. So now this is what it looks like, and I've reached the side of the purse. So I have the clasps open, and now you want to center the middle hole on the side of the coin purse. And you're going to hold it in place, and then sew down the holes on the side of the purse. So now I'm going to come up through. You can let go once you know where the position is on the purse, but you're always going to want to reposition once you've done that. So make sure that that center hole stays on the side. And then you're ready to go down. And again, you want to maintain the stitch so that it's going evenly on the front. And then you're going to follow the holes down the side of the purse. So now this is what my work looks like so far, and this last hole was kind of a half hole, so it wasn't completely closed off, but I still put my stitch in there anyway. And then now I'm going to make sure that I'm positioned right along the center, and I'm going to take and come out that center hole with my tapestry needle. Make sure your yarn doesn't get tangled. And then you're just going to go in and out around this hole, securing it in place. So just go in and out of the center hole to secure it here, and then when you come back you'll see how many times I went through. So again, here is what it looks like all the way down, and then I went in and out of the hole right above it, and then to the left, to the right, and then below it. And now I'm going to head up and around and all the way back to where I started. Now remember, as you're sewing that back portion, make sure you stretch it to make sure that it's going to fit as you sew it across. Sometimes your yarn might get frayed, so this is how far I've gotten. So all the way from the front into here. So now what I'm going to do is just remove my tapestry needle and put some more of the same colored yarn on, and then I just resume where I left off, and again I'm leaving a long enough loose yarn end for burying in my work later, and I'm just going to tie a knot to secure it for now. And then I'll come back to bury those later. Then I'm just going to resume where I left off. Now, another thing that can happen is one of the sides can move and fray your yarn. So to avoid that, you can go ahead and sew down both sides. Just make sure that they're even before doing that, and then just take your tapestry needle and then just go through. Usually I'll come from the other side, but since I've already sewed down the clasp, I'm going to go from the outside, because you can always take and bring the knot ends through to the wrong side. So leave a long loose yarn end and then just go through. And you can go back through the hole after coming out if you need to. So now I'm going to go through the hole and then just tie a knot. That way it'll secure it and it's not moving around as you crochet. So I'm going to leave this for now and then come back to it. And then I'm just going to finish sewing down the edge. You can see how I made sure that both of the larger holes on the side are even. Some of the holes on the angle are really tricky to get into, so I even if I have to bring it back down again, the crochet work, just to get the needle through, and then just cinch the yarn back, and it brings it right back into the frame. Now for the part where I got to the opposite side and I actually tied the knot here, it's hard to go through the knot if you do that. Excuse me. So I went down below and then up above too. So now for the loose yarn end, I'm just going to bring it to the inside. And then I'm going to tie a knot on the inside and bury the loose yarn end on the inside. So this is what it ends up looking on the outside of the purse, the other side. So you could always, if you don't like the knot here, you can always tie a knot on the inside and then work around. Don't put the knot over the center hole. So that's an option that you can do as well. And then on the inside, I'm just bringing it up along the side of the purse. And I'm going to bring it up a little bit higher so that way I can tie a knot on the inside. And I'm just going to go through twice to secure it. And then I can go ahead and bury it. So I'm just going to go right and weave it through the inside of the purse. And then just trim the loose yarn end. So now I only have a little bit left to sew in place, but before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and just weave some of my loose yarn ends along the inside using my larger tapestry needle. And sometimes I like to go 2 different directions just to make sure it's nice and buried. And then you want to make sure you don't mess up your design on the front. And then I'm just going to bury my other loose yarn end. And then the loose yarn ends are nice and buried on the inside. Now, if the yarn is too difficult for you to use or a little bit too thick, you can also use yarn thread. So yarn thread or embroidery thread will also work well. Just make sure you have the right colors that you use with your project. Now for some of the holes, it might be really tricky getting the angle right. So for this one, I angled it down so it came out the opposite side. And then what you can do is just remove the needle and then pull the yarn back through. So that's one easy way if you're having difficulty angling the needle. You can just angle it through because you can always pull the yarn back out. Then you can take and just bury your loose yarn ends on the inside. And then just make sure you don't ruin the design on the front. You only want it buried on the wrong side. So go ahead, finish burying all of your loose yarn ends. Then you have your gorgeous matching Heavenly Blessing coin purse. And this is a nice size. I'm going to give you the measurements for it, but first I just want to show you what mine looks like. You can see how I use the matching yarn all around. This is what it looks like on the inside. And then these will fold in, will clasp. This is what it looks like on this one side, on the back side, and on the other side. So it looks really pretty. Here are your cross stitches, and then your Trinity stitches. So here's the new star of my video tutorials, and I have the link for him under the beginners button at the top of my home page, but he can measure. He has a little tape measure. So let's see what we have here. So for the width, we have about 7.5 inches, and then for the length, it's about 6.5 inches. And then what's nice about him is he will retract the tape measure with his little button here.